Yeah, let's do some shooting. And there she is. Feels very well made. 5 shots in 2 seconds at 3, 5, 7, and 10 yard. Somebody is gonna win a Traeger right now. Oh, God, this gun, I wanna just throw it. One in the chamber. How about that? Hey everybody, welcome back to the Concealed Carry channel. I'm Grant McLean. Today we're going to do part 2 for the Canik TP9 Elite SC. Follow up with my findings from the range, and then we're going to go into kind of dissecting the features and benefits of the pistol, and that way you can make a better educated decision on whether or not this might be a good fit for you. Before we jump into things, thank you so much to our Patron supporters. You guys are freaking awesome. If you do need to get anything, visit nwarmory.com. Northwest Armory has been awesome to the channel, so let's make sure to be awesome to them, and they can ship to your local FFL if you see something you like. And last but not least, X-Hunt Targets. Go to xhunttargets.com to order up some of the awesome reactive targets that you're going to see here in a moment on the channel. I like them very much, and they are also weather resistant, so if you're here in the Northwest like we are, shooting outside, they are perfect for that. All right, so without further ado, and if you didn't get a chance to see part 1, go into the description below. You'll get a link to part 1 where we do a formal unboxing and talk about first impressions. Now that I've had some time behind the trigger at the range, let's talk about it. First, we'll start off with our target here. Now, if you haven't seen this before, what we are doing is 5 shots, 2 seconds. That's our goal at 3, 5, 7, and 10 yards. Now, the 3-yard group was a 1.4-inch group. I was pretty dang happy with that. This is 4 shots, 1 shot up there. Yeah, can't really complain about that. The 5-yard, 1.5-inch. So this is just 1/10 of an inch larger at nearly almost twice the distance. And we have 3 shots here, 4, 5. Pretty happy about that too. This would be banging on steel plates all day long. Now, the 7 yards, the second shot, I knew it was off to the left. And sure enough, it went off to the left. And the 4 shots here were really nice. You know, we're looking at maybe or how about a 1.8-inch group with these 4, and then I knew that second shot actually was off to the left. 3.8-inch group, still not that bad. You know, if you're out shooting 6-inch steel plates, you're banging on them, they're ringing. And the 10 yards, this was actually really surprising for me, was a 3-inch group off to the left. And if you've seen any of my reviews, it is not abnormal for me to be, you know, off to the left with a gun that I've never shot before. Sighting it in, zeroing it in to you is really important. So don't be discouraged if you're a new shooter seeing this and you're like, hey, you know what, for some reason I drift off to the left or I drift off. Yeah, practice, practice, practice. But also, you know, remember that everybody zeroes their gun in a little bit different. Not everybody's eyes, their hands, the way that they, you know, shoot the gun and sight in their guns is the same. You know what I mean? That's normal to understand. So be patient with yourself, but primarily here I'm looking at groupings, and we have a 3-inch group at 10 yards. Not sad about that at all. So I gotta say, the gun it's a shooter. Now, the way the gun felt when shooting it, I'm pretty familiar, and I like to shoot 40s and 45s, 10 millimeters, things like that. Pretty snappy guns, you could say. And more felt recoil than a 9mm or a 380 or 22, of course. This gun felt like you were shooting a 40. And it kind of took me back by surprise a bit, because the slide, you know, has a good amount of weight, or at least the balance of the gun feels a little front heavy. So I was like, oh, you know what? This could actually, for a sub-compact, could shoot really smooth. We'll have to see what happens. And I was actually a little let down, and I wasn't. And one of the things too is the slide spring. The spring on this is pretty heavy, So I was a little concerned going to the range, and I was like, is this thing going to have failure to ejects with 115 grain? So I took some 115, I took some 124, we shot it, and no failures to eject or feed or anything like that. No malfunctions there. Even with 115 grain, the gun just felt kind of snappy, which if you're not used to, I would say, it might come as a surprise. Or I guess if you're a new gun owner, you might not even know the difference. But, that made me understand a little bit more of why people who I talk to that have Canics, and they're like, yeah, I have a Canik. It was my first purchase, because obviously what you get for the money is substantial. And then they're in the store buying their next gun because I think that maybe they've shot other guns and they're like, wow, this one is a little bit more snappy. I want something that's going to be more flat shooting and have a bit more control. Plus, there are some desired upgrades that you might want, and we'll talk about those here momentarily. But that's kind of the thing. Is if you're okay with a snappy gun and you do have time to get behind the trigger and learn how to control that, this could really be a good fit for you. For those of you who maybe have like arthritis, tendonitis, I've met a few people that even have like had major surgery on their hands and they're just, I don't have the strength like I used to. This slide, even though you can get a good hold of the slide because it's pretty wide, it's got a pretty heavy weight. So I wouldn't necessarily jump right into ordering the gun blindly and have it shipped over to your FFL and just saying, hey, I'll learn. I would really try to find a range or reach out to folks on your local forum. Maybe somebody can meet you at a range who has one, or a gun shop can have one in stock, and really get a handle on that. And then also keep in mind, in my opinion, it's more of a snappy gun. So if your wrist can't really handle that, then hey, you know what? Again, try to find one that you can shoot prior to purchasing. So let's go ahead and do what we usually do and start from the top and work our way down to the magazine. So first thing is, up with these sights, they are a dovetail sight. They are metal, which is nice. With the rear sight, you have a flat face to the rear sight, and there are serrations there. So if you're going to be doing, say, one-handed reload or manipulation of the gun, it's kind of nice. You can actually use this to rack the gun off of some sort of ledge. Now, on the back side of that rear sight, it also does have serrations to help with glare. The optic plate is not part of the rear sight, which is desired by quite a few people, where they want to have some sort of backup sights in case the red dot was to fail, or co-witnessing ability. So you can remove this sight, put a red dot on, and depending on how low that red dot sits into the slide, you may or may not be able to continue to use these iron sights as backup sights. But with the cut and how low it is, it looks like you shouldn't have any issues, at least getting those backup sights, your original irons, in somewhat of the window of your red dot. And with that optic cut, the tool and the screws come in the little toolkit with the box itself. Now, the front sight, this is cool, because if you look at it, you're like, oh, wow, it's got kind of like this white, yellowish hue to it. What's wrong with it? Like, has it been baked out in the sun? What's going on? It's actually glow in the dark. So this is kind of sweet. It's not tritium. Go ahead and get some light on it. So it's not a tritium sight, but it's a glow-in-the-dark sight. So we'll go ahead and charge this baby up and check that out. Can you see that? So that's pretty cool that you have that glowing front sight. Now, as far as the slide goes, there are some, features and benefits that you're going to find, I think, that are very reminiscent of other guns. Like with the glow-in-the-dark front sight, that's kind of reminiscent of HK. With the slide, the shape of this is kind of reminiscent of a SIG P320. The serrations, as far as that angle goes, again, kind of reminiscent of a P320, or even like the SIG 226s in a way, and 229s. You do have front serrations, which is nice, because if that's something you're looking for in a pistol, because you don't really get those in some, say like a Smith & Wesson, it's more of an aesthetic little serration. Big old fat serrations on the back, so very easy to be able to get a hold of that. You do have a loaded chamber indicator, but here's what I found is, grab a snap cap here for you. Is that loaded chamber indicator, yeah, you have it. And on part one, I kind of talked about you have a lot of features and benefits on paper, but how does it actually translate into the real world? So even if you have a feature and benefit on paper, like, is it really that good? So we got our snap cap going in, but you can see that that loaded chamber indicator, it barely sticks up. It's barely much of a loaded indicator. I would have liked to have seen them maybe put some red paint on like the bottom part that would be recessed if the chamber was empty, and that way you saw as that little chamber indicator went up, you would see like, okay, I see there's red, there's one on the inside, but I don't know that I don't notice it. You know, it's so subtle. Like even if you rub your hand over the top, you wouldn't go, oh, I feel it. It's there. Like I said earlier, the slide was a little heavy, but I didn't have any issues, failure to feed or eject. It would just be a personal preference of whether or not you are comfortable with that heavy of a slide. Going into the coating itself, it's a really nice color. It's like this tungsten gray, and the coating is not applied in a poor way. It looks very well finished. Let's talk about the controls here real quick. First thing I saw when I saw this gun, I was like, wow, the slide lock release lever, this looks exactly like a Walther. So, what do you know? Conveniently, I just happen to have one. And you can really see the reminiscence of that Walther. Now, this is one of my favorite slide lock release levers, period. So they did, you know, if they're going to take something from somebody, you know, that's nice. Same as like the glow-in-the-dark front sight, very reminiscent of an HK, which, great pistol. That slide lock release, it's ambidextrous, it's big, fat, it's easy to use, easy to manipulate. I do really like that. Even though I don't have very large hands, I have about medium-sized hands, I have no problem manipulating that. Going into the takedown lever here, again, this is very reminiscent. It's large like the Walthers, just kind of a different texture there. The magazine release is, this is ambidextrous, and it reminds me a lot of a aftermarket Glock mag release. I don't have the Hive. This is, I believe it's Hive is the company that makes a kind of a checkered mag release, and it looks very, very similar to that. The only one that I have is going to be the Shield Arms one on my Glock 43X, so it's not exactly comparable to that. But hey, they did a good job in realizing, hey, people are upgrading their Glocks to that. Let's go ahead and do something reminiscent of it. As far as the trigger goes, I do actually like this trigger. I've liked it since pretty much day one of handling the gun. It does remind me a lot of like the Glock or the Walther trigger. And then it has the little red, you know, kind of safety there. It reminds me kind of the Zev. So again, you know, pulling from other manufacturers and putting it into one package. But the trigger itself, and we'll take a look here, I'll show you. It's about a 5-pound trigger, but it's really smooth all the way from start to finish. And we're going to depress that safety and just do a nice pullback. And you can see that take up there. And then you hit kind of this wall, but it's not the actual wall yet. At the end here, you have a really defined wall and a little bit more pressure, and it snaps like a glass rod. It's nice. The reset is also quite nice too. That's it right there. This is like a short reset trigger. It's not like super, it doesn't have like a really crisp snap to it. It's not like really audible, but you definitely feel it. It pushes your finger forward a little bit and you're right back at that wall again. So I think if you were a new gun owner, or if you aren't, you know, sitting there pulling off these precision shots and you were doing like what I'm doing, like the 5 shots, 2 seconds type of thing, I think that this trigger would surprise you for being such an inexpensive gun, because I've shot guns that are more expensive than this with triggers that I wish felt like this. Yeah, so that's kind of the thing is if, gosh, it is really smooth right there. So if you wanted to be nitpicky and you were going every single little millimeter back, you know, yeah, you could say there's like, oh, there's this kind of like hard spot, a wall, a false wall. Well, no, yeah, you're not really shooting the gun like that most of the time. So you just got that nice smooth trigger pull. For those of you new shooters, I think that this might be nice because it does come to you as kind of surprise when that trigger does break and you fire that shot. Hopefully that'll keep you from anticipating the shot and shooting low. So yeah, good trigger on there. As far as the trigger goes at the range, performed well. The trigger like felt good. It's consistent, easy going. It's not a super heavy trigger. The safety, I didn't have any issues disengaging that, which I have had in other pistols. Actually, the Walther, when I first started shooting it, because I was so used to just putting so little of my finger on the trigger that I would draw the gun and go to shoot, and I wouldn't have enough of my finger into the trigger guard and on that trigger. I didn't have any issues with this, so I was pretty happy with that. On the back here, you'll see this kind of cocked hammer indicator, and you'll see this on like HK, Springfields, where you have this little nub that'll stick out, and basically it's to tell you the hammer is back. And once you pull the trigger, you'll see here, it goes away. Boop, and it goes. Now you have the hammer back, and there it is. So there is that too. So you have like a lot of these, again, safety features, benefits, so on and so forth. You know, nothing groundbreaking. Like I said earlier, it seems like they took several features and benefits from guns that are very successful with them and people do like about them, and they just put them into this gun, make it in Turkey, super low cost on making it, and then selling it into the US market. So again, I don't want to make anybody mad, but it's kind of like the Hyundai. A lot of features and benefits on paper. You know, they say it sells, you know, it's comparable to the Mercedes-Benz, but at the end of the day, you know, how does it actually perform, and what's the longevity of it? Going into the front rail here, yep, you got a nice little pick rail, so you shouldn't have any issues getting like accessories, lights, lasers, you know, laser light combos and stuff like that for it. The holster that comes with the gun itself, this does not have like a cutout, and it is not compatible for a light, laser, or whatever type of combo from the factory with that holster. So that's something to keep in mind, is if you are planning on getting that fun stuff on there, do make sure that you are also considering another holster. Outside of that, let's talk about the grip itself. I do like the grip. It is reminiscent to me of the FN, where you have, or actually kind of the CZ as well, where you have these small little squares that stick up. Now, this is not nearly as aggressive as like the CZ is, where when you grab it and then you look at your hand, you have all these little, you know, squares indented in your hand. And if you're carrying something like that, you know, it could wear on your clothing and, you know, whatever. You might have to take a little bit of sandpaper and knock those down. This, it feels like when you do that already. So that's nice. The inside of the grip panel on your palm here is very reminiscent of the grip that Sig Sauer has on their guns. And that's a pretty desirable texture, kind of like a subtle skateboard type tape. On the front strap here, again, you have more of those little squares. So inside the box, you're going to have an extra back strap so you can adjust the size of it. On the gun, it's going to have the larger back strap, and then you have a smaller back strap to go with it. The undercut to the trigger is actually one of the things that I do like as far as comfort goes on the gun. It feels that you can get higher into the grip. Now, on the back of this, the width of this Beavertail there is really wide. So this is something that may or may not bug you depending on the size of your hands, I think. But as I was shooting the gun at the range, this edge here would dig into my knuckle here. And just not something that I cared for, you know. And I do find that actually with when I was shooting like the Walthers, same thing. I still find that the case with my Q5 match, same thing. It may or may not be important to you, but for me, that's kind of annoying. Not a big fan of how wide that is. I think that they could have really brought that up at a little more subtle of an angle instead of making so blocky where there's almost a corner to this. And that's what bugged me, but that's my own thing. Let's talk about the magazines. Now, like I said, I have medium-sized hands. This does not bug me so much. As you can see, it's not a big deal for me. Now, those of you who have larger size hands and this cut here might be like in the middle of your palm, I could definitely see how that bug you. Because when you go to the longer magazines, like the 15 rounder, it does not extend the back strap of the grip. So now you just have more space there. So if you're looking for a gun that's going to have a longer, kind of like you're looking for a subcompact, but you want to be able to have the ability to go with when you extend the magazine, it's going to extend the grip. This is just not going to be that for you. But if it doesn't bug you, cool thing is you can do, you can use a 15 round magazine or you can use a 12 round magazine, and they have that flush fit base pad. So if you want to do a 12 rounder and you want it to be flush on there, depending on, your outfit, what you're doing, you have those options. So that is kind of cool with all the modularity with this. Outside of that, the gun is fairly comfortable as far as the grip goes. It's a little blocky on the front strap, but I don't, that doesn't bug me a lot because, I've shot Glocks, which are kind of synonymous for being a little blocky. And it's something that you can definitely overcome. Just make sure that the gun is not so uncomfortable that, you're not confident in it because, your hands, you're probably not going to ever change what feels good in your hands. But you can always change how well you shoot the gun through practice, right? So that's the thing is if the gun is so unbearably uncomfortable, it's just probably not a good fit. Just keep shopping. The magazine release works well. With the 12 rounder, I don't feel that it gets hung up on my palm at all, which is sweet. The 15 rounder, I know certain not going to have any issues with that either. So yeah, cool. Ejects well, no issues there. So that's kind of my take on it. I think that it's hard to pass for the money, because you can see these on the market for like $360, $380 if you can find them. They sell incredibly fast, so I'm very grateful to have it here on the channel for y'all. But I'd love to hear feedback from those of you who do have this gun. Is it your first gun? Is it second, third, fourth, fifth gun? What do you think? Because I know there's people who have bought these as their first guns, kind of just looking at it on paper and the value you get, but then they're buying a second gun. Maybe it's not checking one of the boxes that they'd like it to now that they have time behind the trigger. So I'd love to hear from you who have more time than I do behind the trigger, and tell me your thoughts. Other than that, thank you all so much for joining us today for part 2 of the Canik. Do make sure to hit that like, hit the subscribe, and hit that little bell notification. That way you're notified on when we do have more reviews coming out. Check out our Patreon. We greatly appreciate the support. We love what we do here and want to continue to do it. Visit nwarmory.com if you need to order anything. Have it shipped to your local FFL, no problem. And if you want to get some of the awesome reactive targets that you just saw here, go to xhunttargets.com and order some of those up. Other than that, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time here on the Concealed Carry channel. Oh, it does. I'll start. Glowing in there?
I'm closer to the camera. No, but I'm going to stop, turn the lights off, and then we can see it.
Oh, you want to do it right now?
Yeah.
Kind of a small amount of, my finger on the trigger. What the f am I talking about? We're just talking about my fingers and triggers. Weird. Okay. So anyways, check that out. If you need, oh my gosh.